Welcome everyone to the Community Infrastructure Service Committee meeting today. It looked like we have a fairly light agenda today, but you never know. So I like to move forward. Do we have a mover for the consent items? Councillor Galloway-Sealock. Do we have any questions? Okay, I'll make a note. I just wanted to make a note on a couple of the consent items that it deals with parking, on-street parking in front of schools. And I just wanted to touch base, and can't wait for the report that's coming sometime in September from staff regarding on-street parking around schools. So I just wanted to make a note of that. Okay, so next item on bid is, oh yeah, sorry, we didn't take a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Great. Okay, next item is we have discussion item number 11 dealing with East Avenue bicycle lane implementation, and Mr. Eadman is going to present the report. Welcome, Mr. Eadman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So staff is recommending that bicycle lanes be installed on East Avenue from Frederick Street to Sterling Avenue and that parking be restricted to one side of the roadway. This is to accommodate bicycle lanes with a half-meter buffer between the bike lanes and the parking within the existing pavement widths. In order to maximize on-street parking availability, staff are proposing that it be on the north side from Frederick Street to Glendale Road and then it transition to the south side from Glendale Road to Sterling Avenue. Parking would continue to be on the north side of East Avenue where it currently exists near the Odd. Staff conducted a number of parking studies throughout this study, including a count during a Kitchener Rangers playoff game, and found that parking would be accommodated within the existing proposed remaining 85 parking spaces, and there'd be a loss of approximately 70 spaces on the street. Staff held a public information center on April 21st, 2015, which was attended by approximately 40 citizens, and 9 comment forms were received. In addition, staff received 25 emails of support for cycling infrastructure throughout through the cycling@kitchener.ca email address. Transportation Services staff met with staff from the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium to better understand the impacts of the proposed project during large-scale events such as hockey games and concerts at the Odd. Following that discussion, staff agreed to phase in bicycle infrastructure between Sterling Avenue and Borden once the LRT is operational. Bike lane infrastructure on East Ave is anticipated to cost approximately $20,000 and will come from the cycling capital account, and staff plan to install this project during the summer should committee and council approve it today.
Okay, we do have some questions for you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Justin. I just want to say that I'll be prepared to move the motion at the appropriate time, and I'm pleased to see the community engagement with this project, and this is one bike lane that doesn't have a lot of opposition, so let's celebrate that one.
Okay, we do have two delegations, or you're going to, from the cycling committee, you're going to come as one? Yes. Is that correct? Okay. We have Terry Boutelier and Susie Taki. Just want to remind our delegation that pursuant to Council's procedure bylaw, delegations are permitted to address the committee for a maximum of 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Susie Taka. This is Terry, how do I say
Boutelier.
Boutelier. We're here from the Kitchener Cycling and Trails Committee. We just wanted to come to endorse this motion. We've, as a committee, reviewed the staff report and are really happy with it, especially as how it relates to the cycling master plan. So we're just here to show our support for this and all the other initiatives that'll come.
Well, we have one quick question for you. Councillor Galloway-Sealock.
Well, it may not be quick, but answer it as long as you want. My question is obviously this is kind of being a staged approach or a phased approach. And the Cycling Advisory Committee or Cycling and Trails Committee is fine with this approach, waiting until the ION's up and running and sees it as the right direction to move at this time?
Yeah, I mean, we have all reviewed it, and while that, like, we all want the immediate change, it seems to make the most sense, so we also accept the staff recommendation on that part. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
We have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsh, do you have anything further to add? Okay. Moved by Councillor Marsh. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, second item on the agenda is item number 12, dealing with the neighborhood property standards compliance Strategy, and Mr. Turner will be speaking on behalf of the report. Welcome, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The report before you relates to a project that is getting underway in our division relating to compliance strategies in neighborhoods. So I'll just take a couple of moments to comment on some of the information in the report and then open it up for questions. This project was identified last year, and our focus is on looking at some of our existing business processes, as well as doing research into what other processes may be available in terms of enforcement and achieving a quicker or a higher level of compliance in neighborhoods. We also found that although it wasn't originally part of the decision-making process, the work that we want to undertake aligns with some of the information we received or council received as part of the Compass Kitchener public consultation report that was received by council back in the fall. And one of many items, as you know, there were many items contained in that report, but one of them related to our area and spoke about improving the enforcement of city bylaws, particularly property maintenance standards. So we do believe that there is an appetite in the community to be part of a review process or that looks at the processes as well as opportunities for the future. So as indicated in the report, our project has two objectives. The first is to look at our services and our processes to ensure that they adequately meet the current needs of our community. And the analogy, and some of you may have heard me use this analogy before, I think of tools in a toolbox. And we want to determine the appropriateness of existing tools, but also look at opportunities to develop new tools that will help us in achieving compliance in the neighborhood. And then those tools, of course, can include anything from enforcement to education. The other piece of our project and the second objective is increasing our ability to be flexible and adaptive in a variety of circumstances. And as members of council may know that although we may be dealing with the same bylaws day after day, situations can vary. And the situations can relate to the property or can relate to the individuals themselves that we're involved in. And probably one of the most common pieces of feedback that we receive from the public relates to the length of time involved in some of our processes. In simple language, some simply say that the process takes too long. And we do know that there are certain situations that we may be able to respond and resolve within a day. Many instances or many occurrences could take weeks or months, and every once in a while we come across a file that can keep us entertained for 2 years or more. We also want to look at, or must understand, I should say, that there are certain types of legislative constraints that we are subject to, and we have limited ability to circumvent those legislative requirements. So that has to feed into the review process as well. But on the other side of the same issue, we've also received feedback from the public from time to time that, with the perception that our processes are somewhat too strict and inflexible, anywhere from the type of requirements that we're asking are too expensive, to the language we use in our notices and orders are overly strict. So we want to ensure that the community understands that we need to strike a balance between all sides of these issues. So on page 212 of the report, I've outlined 6 areas of focus. These are an example of the type of issues that we want to look at. It's certainly not limited to those 6 areas, but they include a review of our property standards bylaw, which is currently underway. It's also going to include public awareness tools, specifically around process, public expectations, and areas of jurisdiction. For example, what we can do and what we're not able to do, or where we don't have areas of jurisdiction. We want to look at the increased use of tickets where it's appropriate, as opposed to a court summons, which involves a far more lengthy court process. We want to look at the increased use of fees for inspections for non-compliance where it's appropriate. We've also identified a need to further ingrain alternative dispute resolution types of techniques into our enforcement process, particularly for those neighborhood issues that or neighbor disputes that might better be addressed through, again, alternative methods such as mediation. And the final piece, as identified in the report, is we want to, or we will continue to participate in the comprehensive zoning bylaw review that's taking place in within the planning division, specifically around the types of trends that we're seeing around residential standards. The final piece of my comments relates to the public consultation process. The process is still unfolding, but we do, or we have identified the ability to work with the network of neighborhood associations. So we've tapped into that and are hoping to have a more fruitful discussion with the neighborhood associations at a summit that takes place each year, and that will be in November. That's just one step in the process. We also know that we have specific stakeholders that we need to identify and speak to relating to particular topics, as opposed to the general consultation that will take place within the public realm. So that's a brief overview. We're certainly interested in any feedback that council wants, and the purpose of the report today was really just to inform council as to what our next steps are.
Thanks, Mr. Turner. We do have several questions for you. Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this report and see this here, and the outline that you've given us on what your intent is moving forward. I was just wondering if the review was going to look at the possibility of proactive enforcement versus complaint, or a combination of both. Is that something, and related specifically to property standards, is that something that you're looking to address, knowing that there's probably resources that need to come with that? But
through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly that's something that we'll take note of and speak to as part of the review. We don't know where we're going to land on a lot of these issues. And again, this is more of an information piece than anything, but certainly we will take that feedback and build that into the review. And as the review, and I neglected to mention this, but as our review unfolds, we anticipate that there may be reports back to council at periodic times versus one comprehensive report, depending on the timing of issues. So how our review is reported back to council, again, is still yet to be determined. But I do anticipate that certain reports may come back earlier than others, depending on the issue and the timing.
yeah, and that's fair. I just think starting to hear a little bit from the community that they're not liking the approach of having to tattle on their neighbors, and so if there's a piece where it can either be complaint or proactive enforcement, I think it's something that we should at least look at through this review. So I'm happy to see this and would be prepared to move it at the appropriate time.
Okay. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Shane. Shane, first of all, I would say that I'm very pleased with the response I get from your department, or I have over the years. But I've always been curious why this issue of responding to complaints, why not be proactive? If your staff drive by properties, I could name a few in my ward, where obviously they are flaunting property standards, why don't you just go in and look at it?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think I could probably provide a more wholesome response as part of our review, but the issues that come to mind first and foremost is resources. And once we get into an element of proactive enforcement where we're not now, and I will remind council that there are certain elements where we are proactive, but once we go down that road, it really becomes a question of how far do we go and what are those parameters, and I think that's the type of thing that has to be part of the discussion. So certainly it's a challenging topic. I get asked this question almost weekly. If I had to provide an answer right now, it would be mostly around the issue of resources. But to a certain extent, we also try to be respectful of the level of tolerance in neighborhoods, and quite simply, we've been criticized in the past for going door to door and going into people's backyards. So it becomes a balance, and I think it's probably more appropriate that we provide a more wholesome response as part of our review.
Yeah, I'm not talking about backyards. I'm talking about front yards, porches that are falling down, that kind of stuff. But anyway, that was going to be my second question. Do you see this survey as resulting in a cry for more resources, which I think you need, by the way?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have to be totally honest in saying that we've not talked about resources as part of this review. As things unfold, we'll see where it goes, but at this particular point, it's more about what can we do with our existing processes, what's appropriate, and then when we start looking at what changes or improvements or enhancements, that's probably where resources might come into play, but I honestly don't know where we're going to land on any of these issues right now.
And my last question, in the case of downtown buildings that have been standing empty, how do you know that property standards are in place and that adequate repairs are being made?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the topic is vacant buildings. We do believe that just overall, whether it's downtown or citywide, the issue of vacant buildings is going to be a significant part of our focus in terms of looking at what other municipalities are doing to encourage either maintenance or redevelopment. As for the downtown, we have implemented through Mrs. McNeil's work with the BIA, we've implemented a program that's getting off the ground in terms of a level of proactive monitoring of buildings in the downtown. Certainly, to your question around how do we know about certain types of, whether certain standards are being maintained, visually from the outside, that work's already been done. An audit has been done of the downtown. In terms of the interior of buildings, that's quite problematic in that our powers of entry into buildings is certainly limited compared to exterior issues. So to a certain extent, we don't know what the condition of vacant buildings are inside, but often there will be telltale signs visible from the outside that could speak to an issue on the inside.
So in the case of buildings that end up being demolished because of property standards, that's outside of your area of control. You can't go into a building.
Under certain circumstances, we can. I'm not saying that we can't enter a building. Dwelling units versus vacant buildings, we're talking about two different thresholds. We certainly, we have the ability to do interior inspections, but it's not. The point I was trying to make is it's not as simple as it is to do an exterior inspection for obvious reasons. We have to have just cause, and that's what. That's where a survey of the exterior of the building can sometimes provide telltale signs that say we need to get inside.
Thank you.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to, my question was around vacant buildings, and so it sounds like my question was answered, but I just want to reiterate, I want to emphasize that I encourage this report to come back with some solutions regarding vacant buildings.
It certainly will.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Councillor Gazzola.
I have a couple of issues that are affecting me in the ward that I represent, and I've been stymied on being able to do anything about it, and I'm curious if this type of review will be able to consider these issues or what can be done. The two issues, the first one deals with shopping carts that are strewn all over the neighborhoods. And in the ward that I represent, it's a prevalent problem, and I'm sure it must be in other wards where there are grocery stores and shopping carts. There seems to be nothing from what I've seen that can be done, and yet the problem continues, carries on, and I'm not sure where to turn. So that's one of the issues. The second issue deals with, and I've seen this arise from time to time, where a neighbor has, in this particular case, a huge garbage container plumped in his backyard, orange-colored, and it's just there to aggravate the neighborhood. I know many years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, a situation came to council where a neighbor was building a sort of what was called a monstrosity in their backyard, and it came to council, and somehow it was able to clear up the problem. But here are two issues that I'm getting nowhere on, and I'm just curious as to whether this is going to be able to help.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, again, on both those issues, we're familiar with both of them. They will be spoken to. Where we land, again, I'm not entirely sure. The shopping cart issue is a challenge in a lot of municipalities. I have seen examples of some regulations. The challenge, of course, is those regulations are directed towards the shopping cart owners, who really are, when those shopping carts go off their property, they're a victim of theft. So it's to a certain extent, I've heard the issue as being further victimizing the victim. But certainly it is an issue that we're going to, that's on our radar screen, and we will be taking a look at. The second issue around the storage containers is one of those trends that we've noted in residential areas, and that's going to be part of our discussions with planning through the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. So again, I need to be clear in saying I don't know where it's going to land, but I can assure members of council both those issues will be tied into this review.
Thank you.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Ioannidis. More comment than question. I echo Councillor Etherington's comments about my dealings with you and your department have always been very positive. I've always received great help for any issues that have been brought forward. I do love number 5, where there's going to be an increased emphasis on the use of alternative dispute resolution methods, such as mediation, to help resolve neighborhood disputes. And in my dealings with you and your department, oftentimes what we're really dealing with is a neighborhood dispute, not as much a bylaw infraction. And instead of the city making the decision, I believe that the best decision can be made through the mediation between the two neighbors. And I also absolutely love the in the report here where it says to highlight the need for processes that are flexible and adaptable to the circumstances at hand in order to deliver the most appropriate response. So great work on this report, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Councillor Yaneski.
Yeah, the issue of the number 5, the alternative resolution to address issues. I know staff have sort of attempted that. Has that been a success in terms of how you've handled it, and to what degree the mediation? Is that just basically with amongst bylaw enforcement officers, or do you take it to another degree and involve outsiders, and what's sort of the objective here?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's a combination of both.
Could you speak a little louder? Because my mic is turned off here, or the speaker's turned off.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it really is a combination of both. Our officers go through exercises of mediation and negotiation almost daily in the type of work that they do, but we do have a partnership with, and have for several years, with Community Justice Initiatives here in Waterloo Region that gives us the ability to recommend, or refer, I should say, a dispute to mediators that are skilled at what they do. So really when we talk about this, it's a combination of being able to mediate at the staff level, but more importantly, having that framework in place. So it's there now. The challenge, of course, is I believe it's very much underutilized. So we want to look at ways that we can encourage parties to seek that at this point, it's entirely voluntary, and it has to be voluntary on both sides. So what we want to do is see how we can promote the use of mediation more than we do now, so that we have that formal process in place. It's just a matter of utilization.
And I guess that would depend on the nature of the issue, too, that's being contested. Because I know sometimes there's neighborhood issues that involve property standards, and then all of a sudden that issue goes to the Property Standards Committee to be addressed or resolved or whatever. So I guess whatever the concern is, that's where you may have to balance it.
Yeah, the Property Standards Appeal Committee only has limited powers. Their powers are given to them through the Building Code Act, so often they can only speak to or address the issue that's on the order. And as one councillor just mentioned, sometimes the issue is not about the bylaw violation. It goes deeper, and in some cases is deeper than what a bylaw enforcement officer can solve.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Thank you.
Mayor Verbanevik?
Thank you, and just one further, I guess, follow-up question, and then a comment on, maybe not a question, but just a request as you look at this. A number of folks have raised the issue of empty buildings. I guess the other part that we need to look at in regards to them is empty buildings when they're also attached to properties that have some sort of brownfield issues. And I think that generally is what the problem is, and you know, are I guess other cities handling them differently, or is there something we need to do in terms of ongoing advocacy with the province and so on? Obviously our brownfield remediation program isn't doing enough to address them. I mean, I can think of one in particular in Councillor Marsh's ward, and you know, maybe we need to figure something else out about those properties to get something to happen.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, we know that through our networking that some municipalities, many municipalities are facing the same challenges as we are in terms of vacant buildings, and are starting to think what would be somewhat outside of the box from those of us that live in these structured frameworks. So we're seeing a little bit of creativity in other municipalities, and we want to see what we might be able to adopt that might be appropriate, or a combination of things to find the best fit for the City of Kitchener. So we certainly do think that there's some improvements we can make on that point. On the other issue of advocacy to the province, we will certainly make note of that as well, because it provides us an opportunity to identify those constraints, and if there's an opportunity for council to, or if we have some way to make our voice known, we certainly have contacts with municipal associations that might help us advocate for some change. I know most of the challenges that we face from a legislative standpoint, other municipalities are facing the same challenges.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you for that, and I too just want to echo the comments of a number of others of appreciation to you and your team. I know you do a very diligent job in terms of serving our community very well, and it truly is appreciated.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. Just one follow-up question. So what is the timeline for this report? When do you think we'll be seeing it back here?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we believe, and first of all, let me reiterate what I said earlier. It may be a series of reports based on the topics as opposed to one comprehensive report. That's what I envision. Yep. What we anticipate from now till the end of the year will be mostly about public consultation. We know that there will be an opportunity for us to engage neighborhood associations in November, so we're going to get some information out to them over the summer, identify some key stakeholders. So we anticipate the first set of, unless the light bulb comes on and there's something that we can do fairly quickly on a particular issue, I anticipate that the first report back on an issue is we're probably going to be talking about, I'm going to say February, March of next year, not before that. Because again, unless there's something that really sticks out as something that we can report on sooner.
The need for public consultation is great. I fully support that, but I'm just wondering, do you have a lot of conflicting feedback on some of the issues regarding property standards, or are there so far, just anecdotally, or do you see some consistent opinions out there?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think probably the most consistent piece of feedback we're going to get back is around timelines. The second piece of it is going to be around the process, not understanding the process. A lot of people think that they can make a call and the problem will be solved within the day, and in some cases it is,
Right.
but in many cases it isn't. It depends on whether or not we're looking at a 24/7 immediate response type of situation or a case management type of situation where we book appointments for inspections and that sort of stuff. So
Okay.
I think we're going to hear comments on those two issues. I do also believe that we're going to hear comments on the issue of proactivity versus reactionary as well.
All right. So just one last thing. I'm thinking about neighborhood association newsletters because a bunch are going out this summer in my ward, and I'm just wondering if you already know that you're going to be doing this type of consultation in November. Perhaps, can you get some dates out through the neighborhood association newsletters as one mode of communication to get those out there, just to get the buzz started already, just as an idea. I'm just putting it out there.
Certainly,
Thank you.
through you, Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that those discussions have already taken place. We know that most of the neighborhood association meetings usually take a break in the summer, but we've talked with community programs and services about the ability to start disseminating some information as a heads up, so that we can have a more meaningful discussion in the fall as part of their summit, as opposed to just waiting till that point. So it's going to be a process of, as you've described, feeding some information out there. But unfortunately, the summit itself, and it's only one piece of the consultation process, but we think it's an important one. Sorry, excuse me. We think it's an important one. So we want to make sure that we can build up to that. I don't know the specific date, but I know it'll be in November.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you, and really glad to see this. I think this is a long way coming. It's a missing piece in really figuring out on some of those situations in our in different neighborhoods throughout the city where the neighbors just can't seem to get along on some issues, and some residents that are not compliant of our bylaws, and it's been difficult in figuring out what the right steps need to be to engage them and to find a resolution. So I wanted to make a point, if as part of the review, and I'm assuming it probably would be the case, that we look back on some of our old files that have been open for a while and have been very contentious, where we haven't really been able to find solutions. And part of this review, we can work towards in figuring out what those solutions could be in changing our bylaw.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that will absolutely take place, and some of those files that you refer to was part of the impetus in moving forward at this particular time with this type of a strategy. So certainly we'll be doing research internally on the challenges we've experienced with our files, in addition to all the research that we do outside of our community.
Exactly, and that's great that we're going to be looking outside our community to see best practices that other cities have been able to implement. But as I said, I think there's much to learn from issues that we have already been dealing with. I'm glad that's going to be a proactive approach.
Certainly.
We have no further comments or questions. I just want to thank Mr. Turner and Ms. McNeil for the great things that you guys do, and I don't envy you guys in the position you guys are in half the time, or most of the time, I shouldn't say half the time. And I think anytime we go through a compliance review and try to see which things are working and which are not, and is a good thing for us and for our citizens. So thank you. With that, moved by Councillor Galloway-Sealock. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next item for business is item number 13, and that's with you again, Mr. Turner, regarding the noise exemption and parking enforcement with Big Music Fest 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I'll just provide some brief comments on the two components of this report. The first being the noise exemption. Similar to last year, the noise exemption is structured, I should say a variation from last year. The noise exemption is structured in such a way as to begin earlier in the day to capture the sound checks. We did receive some calls last year prior to the exemption coming into place at 3 o'clock in each of the 3 days with regard to the sound check. So we've extended that based on the feedback we're getting from the event organizers and Metalworks, the sound engineering company, that 10 a.m. should be good for the sound check piece of it. Certainly, in light of the recent announcement, we will need to vary the recommendation to remove July 12th from the event dates. But otherwise, we anticipate that with all the communication in the neighborhoods, or the neighborhood around McLennan Park, certainly the noise exemption ending at 11 o'clock is critical. And last year we had no issues with that, so I don't anticipate any further issues on the 10th or the 11th. The second piece of this is new, relating to the special event parking, and council will remember that we came forward in April to amend our traffic and parking bylaw to provide a new requirement that whenever council designates a special event for the purposes of parking, then the parking violations or the fines within that designated area for that prescribed period of time would double. And the way to designate it, the way to properly designate the special event for the purposes of legal action, if we ever had a parking ticket that was challenged, would be for council to pass the bylaw. So what we're recommending is a very brief bylaw be enacted. It will come to council on June 29th. Yes, June 29th. And what that will do will, sorry, excuse me for my voice. That will designate the special event parking area for Friday and Saturday, from Friday approximately noon hour until Saturday night as a special event parking area.
We do have several questions for you, Mr. Turner. Councillor Galloway Seelock.
I just wanted to go back to the sound check issue. Understanding that the noise exemption is now from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Has there been discussions around that they won't start obviously before 10? I know that some of the sound checks were done at 7 a.m. Or at least that's what I've been told by a couple of the residents in the area. So are we going to avoid that? Or make that pretty clear that sound checks, like really no noise should go on before 10 a.m.?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly the 10 a.m. Starting point was something that was based on feedback we received from the event organizers. So we'll certainly go back and ensure that they understand the 10 a.m. start time. I wasn't aware of calls as early as 7 a.m. last year. I certainly wouldn't say that it didn't happen.
Yeah. I'm not sure that they called in. It was just in running into these people that they've told me that. So I didn't pass it along to you. So something that I just wanted to flag to make sure, because they need that relief. If it's going till 11 o'clock at night and it's starting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're not really being able to get their sleep in there. The other question, how was the area determined for parking? That special parking zone?
The map that's attached to Schedule 1 to the report was determined based on discussions with the area councillor as well as the Big Music Fest staff team.
Okay. My opinion on that would be that it stretches pretty far, and you could end up with a number of complaints with people who end up getting tickets because they don't feel that they're that close to the area and may want to have people over to park. So my concern is just the other side of Westmount Road. I feel is a little bit far. Some of the other areas might not be so bad to include, but that's just my thought. It's a try and see, but that would just be my comment and concern.
Mr. Turner.
Yes, I'll try to address that issue, Mr. Chairman. The area that was identified originally last year for parking enforcement was a similar area, but we did find early into the event that there was virtually no enforcement necessary on the opposite side of Westmount. But given the fact that the fines are increasing, that might cause the parking to dissipate further out into the neighborhood. So we thought it was appropriate to create this the same block, But that doesn't mean we're going to be actively enforcing in all those areas.
Are they going to get all this area? Are they going to get those special parking passes then for that they were last year?
Yes,
The
this
2 passes
designated
per
area.
household?
Based on the project team's actions, this designated area will all receive notification that they qualify for parking permits. Again, we have a lot of staff on that day, including myself and the supervisor, who will be coordinating efforts, and we'll make sure that we don't go into an area and actively enforce in an area that's not necessary. And that's exactly what we did last year. The area did shrink in terms of enforcement when we saw what the effects were. However, again, just to repeat myself, we thought it was safe for this year as the first year of this type of initiative that we stay with the same large area in terms of designation, but again, that certainly doesn't mean that that's going to have to be the area for enforcement. It'll depend on how vehicles might dissipate further out based on the threat of increased fines.
Did we find, just from a parking perspective, I know a number of the local churches, utilized it as an asset and used their parking lots. Was all of that used in uptake? Like, were those slots full? Because there's a number of different areas within that can utilize that as an opportunity as a revenue generator for their groups.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. It was a combination of a variety of areas, including schools and the churches. Our evidence shows that some parking lots were utilized more than others. Some lots were full, others were not close to capacity. And again, it depends on their positioning as well as how close they are to the event. So I would say that if you wanted more specific information around those counts, we could get that from the special events.
Just was wondering if some of those close locations were well utilized, because the fine would have been very close to, like for a ticket, would have been very close to what they were charging for their parking lots, and I understand that that's probably why we're increasing the fine. Like I understand that, so Absolutely. I was just wondering whether the uptake may be greater, or if there is more access to parking than if they weren't fully utilized last year. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Just
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can't quote specific numbers, but it's my understanding that the off-site parking, the number of off-site parking spots has increased from last year. Percentage-wise, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's my understanding that there will be more lots available. And we do anticipate that the level of utilization should be higher than last year, given the fact that the potential parking fines would be higher than what the lot fees are.
And just one last question. How do we plan on notifying the community about that increased parking fine?
We're going to be doing that in two ways, similar to the public awareness campaign that we put forward last year. All of the letters that go out to the neighborhoods include a clause that says that because of recent changes, the parking fines in the neighborhoods have significantly increased. That's the first piece of it, as well as all signage along this borderline in the shaded area. All of the major roads that enter into this colored or the shaded area had signage last year, barricades that said parking enforcement was strictly enforced. And so we're going to be using those same message boards and signage to also include the increased fine message. And that's on top of any other sort of information that can be posted on websites, or information that goes back to the ticket purchasers online and that sort of stuff. So we're utilizing the same sort of strategies last year with the added message.
Nope, sounds like you've thought of it all, so thank you.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yeah, I wonder if you can tell me how we did last year. Did the fines that we received cover all the costs that your division incurred?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no. Last year we issued approximately 240 tickets in the neighborhood, which is significantly lower than we anticipated, but to be quite frank, it was a bit of a pleasant surprise, in that our goal is not to issue tickets. Our goal is to try and deter people right off the start. So there's 240 tickets. I believe the face value of all those tickets was somewhere in the range of about $4,500 to $4,800. Not saying that we would realize all of that revenue, because there's certain reasons why certain types of tickets don't get paid if they get canceled at court or whatever. So with that number, the cost did not cover our enforcement costs. Our enforcement costs were in the range of about $14,000 for the 3 days.
Were these costs passed along to the promoter?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, they were identified in a report, in the debrief report in September, as an unbudgeted cost, so our division did not recover our costs last year from the promoter.
Can someone explain to me from staff why those costs weren't recovered? I understood that policing and extra costs were to be recovered from the promoter.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's information I'd have to get back from the special events staff and report back.
Okay, and in line with that, I'd asked for a detailed report concerning the whole event, and I know we did receive some partial reports, but I've never have heard anything back. And then I was aware that the promoter did receive significant provincial grants, and that financial reports would have been prepared and distributed, but I've never seen or heard of anything. Have any steps been taken as to my request at that time? That isn't a question probably for Mr. Turner.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can endeavor to get information back based on these points, but I'm not in a position to answer them at this point.
Anyone else on staff would be?
Do you have any other further questions that are relevant to the bylaw, Councillor Gazzola?
Are you trying to say what I asked wasn't relevant to the bylaw? I asked for a report last year. I've not heard anything yay or nay. I think it would have been appropriate if I had heard something, so I'm taking this opportunity to ask it again, and I'm not hearing anything again.
Okay, we'll have Mr. Wilmer address that.
Certainly, we can follow up. I hadn't recalled that there'd been no response, yay or nay, so we will respond. And without Mr. Regier here, I'm unable to provide a specific answer.
Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, thank you. And I'll quickly make a comment to clarify some of the questions that were asked. And Mr. Turner has done a good job already with why the expanded area for the parking. As a ward councillor, I was taken into feedback as well. The hydro corridor is one that may accommodate walking distance, close enough walking distance, so allowing people to park in further distances, especially with increased fines. So it's a look and see approach. I think we learned significantly from our last year approach. One of the things that not only, but one of the many compliments received about the planning and the city's effort was a parking strategy. So we are continuing on with what was done last year with small tweaks, and again, a lot will be learned from this year as well. So just a comment to Mr. Turner. Great job on what was done by your department, and compliments, and best of luck for this year as well.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you. Through the chair, just in light of the extraordinarily high noise levels experienced at a recent event at a different site, and those noises could be heard, as you are well aware, several kilometers away. I just am wondering if your department has considered thinking about decibel levels or bass levels that would be included in the noise exemption to have maximums, so that if measured, we could clearly state, look, this is not acceptable, you got to turn it down, so that we have something measurable to address concerns?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, absolutely. In light of the event that took place a couple of weeks ago, which was quite simply more than we anticipated, we have begun a review process to determine what other municipalities may be doing in terms of decibel levels. How that event differs from many other events is that it's electronic dance music that creates significant bass and vibrates through the ground, buildings, that sort of stuff. So we don't anticipate the same type of impact. I mean, certainly live concerts are there's a high level of noise, but not quite the same type of bass as you get through electronic dance music. So we know that we have to respond and have begun that response in terms of looking at what we might be able to do for those certain types of events that we can anticipate may be problematic. And that's going to be looking at the ability for us to implement decibel levels. It's not an easy science, but it's certainly something that we know we have to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Etherington?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Turner. Shane, in the Bingaman's event, were you monitoring the noise levels?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we weren't specifically monitoring the noise levels since we don't have a process in place now to...
Okay, Mr. Turner, the question is not relevant towards what's on the item of the agenda.
It's relevant to people across the city in every ward.
Still, it's not related to the item.
Okay,
Do you have any
make
other
my
questions?
point. I know it's flogging a dead horse, but I've had this experience with various events in the past. This one I noticed did not get the type of complaints, but I would really urge you to find a way to monitor those noise levels under the bylaw. Is that okay, Mr. Chair?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, I forgot to mention I was going to request to move. When ready.
Okay. Well, there is no further questions, and again, I just want to remind this committee, the more regulations and restrictions that you place on special events will detract from bringing special events to our community, and we want to create this this vibrant community with a vibe that attracts people that want to live here. So again, I know, granted, there is some circumstances, but we also have to be mindful of that. So with all that, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is item number 14, dealing with the amendments to Chapter 680, Sign Bylaw of the Municipal Code, General Regulations, and we're going to have Ms. Olsterfeld to address the report. Okay, you're buzzed in.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with all the road construction that I think we're all very keenly aware of over the past couple of years, we've come to an awareness of impacts to private properties. So in the case of this particular report and the proposed bylaw, we're looking at when a road widening is taken, what are the impacts on the existing signs? So typically they have to get relocated off of that road widening and back onto private property. So in situations, there are going to be some situations where the bylaw has changed since those signs were constructed. And so to relocate them, they might not meet the current standards. So this particular amendment addresses those signs that might be larger or in height or area than the sign bylaw currently allows, but it allows them to be relocated. So basically taking a balanced approach where a business owner that's been having the benefit of this sign for a number of years, and it's a legal sign with sign permits, can then get relocated because of the road widening. I just wanted to point out that I made one correction to the bylaw since the report was published, and that was circulated to all of you. And the change is in letter A of that, and that includes that it would be a legalization that includes the lot width. So there might be some circumstances where there's a lot that's less than 15 meters wide that has an existing and legal sign on it, and we want to maintain that property owner's right to have that existing sign relocated. So that's all. That was all the information I wanted to share. If you could, but I would ask the committee to make a decision on that circulated bylaw.
We have no questions for you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Galloway-Seelock. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And that concludes today's Community Infrastructure Service Committee. Thank you. wait your next, right? We have just want to have a 5-minute break, or